Hi friends, in this tutorial you'll be understanding your model and its validation. So in this tutorial I'll be looking at few key things in validation. So I just want to note them out in this our textbook before we go ahead. So starting with we'll be looking at safe, we're looking at integer. We'll be looking at match, we'll be looking at main, we'll be looking at email, we'll be looking at file, we'll be looking at URL, unique, compare, and etc. To start, we start with this. We need to start with this. So we'll be making use of our contact form that we created to test all of our validation, all of our validation. So let's open the controller, the model, and let's see the form page. The form, yeah. So meaning majority of the things we do will be between these two pages and the other one. We don't need created ad because this is supposed to be automatically generated for us. So I'll remove this. So right now, if I'm to create on crates, we notice that our required is at work here. It means everything here must be filled before we can proceed, or before the form can be submitted, and that is because all of our forms are inserted into required. Now if we remove this, definitely everything will be submitted. It should be submitted, or might not be saved. It's submitted but not saved. Note that means our table is empty. So I'll go to this our table to make sure we have a clean record. So I'll remove this. So I'll return this. So that's the essence of required. So let's say we just want one of these to, let's say we remove email from this, that we don't want email to be required, but you should be able to replace email somewhere around there, just so that it will be submitted as well. So let's test it. Let's go back to our crate. Note, nothing happened to our email. So let's say I fill in, let's say the name is Femi Yii2, which is my name, and I escape email, and let's say I fill in Femi at, let's say I fill in Yii2 at femi.com.ng, and subject is testing model validation, body for testing model. So let's say we want to input in this validation. Note, we've removed email from our model here, so we don't have anything connected aside the name tag, that is name attribute, label attributes here. So if I click on create, you notice it accepts everything, but in some cases it might just empty your email that is not inserted in this place. That is when safe comes in place, meaning you don't want it to be required, meaning in some forms it might be inputted, or you don't want to make it compulsory. So that's why we need to make use of safe. We might just need to put in safe here. So we understand when to make use of control. Required. Required means it must be the data must be collected before the sum submits. And safe means either it's inputted or not. just go ahead without it. So looking at our next mode validation, we look at integer. Now let's say we want our subject to be integer, meaning just number. We want it to be number only. That's what we need to make use of. Let me return this to previous way. So that's when we can make use of our integer. So let's say we have so we need to input our integer here. So now, which field do we want to make integer? That's when we can now add our subject. So I will save and I'll go back to create. So let's say I input everything. It says all must be blank. Let's input rough data here. And this also rough data. See, it says this must be an integer. This must be an integer. And also, now let me put something like a message. So this must be an integer. Let's say we don't want it to be, maybe we want the message to be this must be a number instead of being an integer. That's why we need to add a message that says you can say message will be this must be a number. This must be a number. I'll save and refresh. So inputting rough data. So you say this must be a number. So that's when you know when to use your integer. So you can make use of multiple as well. Maybe we want our email also to be integer, or let's say name to be integer. So I can just add it to this place and we'll refresh. Our name will have to be a number. So looking at the next, we'll have marks, meaning we don't, for instance, looking at this for our name, email, subject, the current marks is 100 maximum character. Let's say we want our subject to be maximum character of just 10 characters, meaning anything beyond 10 should not be accepted. So I'll comment this out for the integer. Anything beyond 10 character should be, so I'll duplicate this and I'll say 10. I'll remove our subject from here because we don't want it to be 100 anymore, and we want this to be 10. So subject should be string. Without making it string, it might not be able to count it. So we need to make sure that our subject is string in order to cut the character length instead of the numbers. So I'll say subject should be, the maximum should be 10. I'll save and refresh. So I'll do this. I'll make sure that the thing is the character currently inputted is below 10, and if you notice, everything is saved, meaning I can actually submit. But let's say I add more characters to this place. See, I can't even type. Currently I'm pressing my keyboard, but it's not accepting anymore. That's because it has gotten to 10 character maximum length. So that is how you validate, some of the way you validate your form. So for maximum. But let's say I change this to integer. I change this to integer. If I input this, it will says my subject must be a number, must be integer. Now, if I put 9, it will accept it. But if I put 11, knowing that it's 2 characters but more than 10, it will tell me that subject must be no greater than 10. But we only have 2 characters here. But the fact is, in numbers, 11 is greater than 10. So that is why we need to make sure that this is string in order to make sure that we have character maximum length. So next we'll be looking at the minimum, meaning we want to have a minimum character length. Let's say we want our subject to be minimum of 10 character, meaning the subject should accept nothing less than 10. So if I input more, let me refresh. If I input more characters, accept it, right? Everything is fine. But let's say I just input Femi only as my name and say I want to fill in that form. It tells me that subject should contain at least 10 characters. So that's how minimum works. So looking at email, in case we want to validate our email, this will be relevant. For instance, I can input anything here and to accept it. So we want to validate our email. So that is where we will need to make use of this in our email. So we'll say we want our email to be email. Email should be email. If I input email and go to the next one, it says email is not a valid email address. So I need to make sure that I input something related to ads, then the format of email before it can take me to before you can accept it. So note that I write this is written in this way. Also, if I write it this way, it will still accept it. Accept it this way, but the way it was written before means I can only control maybe one field for this validation. So if I want to have more fields to be in email format, then I might now say, okay, I want to add more by making maybe my name also to be in email format. So refreshing, my name and email has to be in format of email. So the next is file. That's if we want to accept file. So maybe if you watched the product tutorial that was created previously, you should see that in our model we added file in there. So for URL, in case we want our, let's say our subject to be in form of URL in website, like it has to be at .com. So we need to control that. So let me remove the minimum character for the subject. Let me comment this out. So I want subject to be email. I'll duplicate this and to be URL. Let's say URL. I want to be in format of URL. The subject to be in format of URL. So typing here, it says subject is not a valid URL, meaning I have to write, let's say femi.com.ng. It's still not accepted. It means I have to add my protocol to it, HTTP before it to be accepted. So in order to avoid such issue that you must input HTTP, so you need to add something to your URL, so which is called default scheme. So let's say you want to make default scheme HTTP or HTTPS. So you can now write it here. We say default scheme. Default scheme is HTTPS. So with this, it will accept femi.com. Let's say to accept HTTP femi.com.ng to accept it, and if I remove this as well, it will still accept it. That's because the HTTPS has been added automatically from the model. So note all these things. And also for unique. Now unique has to do with the database. For instance, in our database, we don't want the same message the same email to repeat twice. So right now we have these three email. We have jack@email.com, femi@email.com, but I don't want femi at any of these to be repeated twice. I want each of them to be unique. So we need to make use of unique, our unique. So that's when we'll make our subject, let's say our email unique. So we can add unique to email. I'll say email should be unique. Meaning email should not appear twice. So going back to my contact form, let's say it must be valid email address. Let me remove that. My name must be email address. No, that is not it. Let me remove the name from email address. So Femi, let me use my email that I have here. Subject Femi in the body. So this must be a valid URL, femi.com.ng. So I want to make use of the previous email I have in my database. So let's say I have femi@email.com, right? Just as we have here, femi@email.com. So that is when but in this case you have to post before it can validate if the email really exists or not. Now it says femi@email.com has already been taken. Remember, you can customize the message to whatever you want. All you just need to use your the word message to control how it is. Let's say you want your message to be email is already taken by another user. So if I submit again, it says image already taken by another user. So that's how to validate, to make sure that your image is unique. Let's say I have some of that extra thing, let's say and I submit, it should be accepted. It shall be accepted. And what's the next thing? Is compare. That is if we want to compare. Let's say we want to compare our name and email, just like comparing two passwords together to make sure that they are the same thing. If password, let's say if name and email are not the same, it should not accept it. It should say that the both of them are not the same. So I need to make use of compare for that. So I'll need to write my default. Let's say I want to compare my name. I'll say compare. So now I need to input my compare attribute. So what I will compare it with, compare attribute would be email. So I want my name and email to be the same thing. If they're not the same thing, it should not go ahead. So I'll save and go back to this place to create. So name is Femi. It must be equal to this. Okay. And let's say email is not a valid email. Let's say I say femi@email.com, which is valid, but this is still giving error because both of them are not the same thing. So I will only get to be given clear way if both of this, they are the same thing. So Femi, this has to be the same thing as Femi@gmail.com before the error will go. Let's say I add extra character to this place and see if it will still be the same thing. It says no. So even if I add extra character to this, this will still be telling me that they are not the same thing. So that is when you can make use of compare in order to compare if two fields are the same thing. I think we've been able to go through all this. So any other model validation probably be peripheral, but these are just some of the major validation you likely to be using in your day-to-day coding in Yii. So see you in our next tutorial.